Intamin is one of my most favorite coaster manufacturers. For as long as I've been alive, Intamin has been pushing the amusement envelope further, building taller, longer, and faster than ever before. For me, Intamin has played a major role in becoming an enthusiast. Back in 2010, Intamin lost connections with one of the largest amusement chains in the country, so on today's episode of Coaster Theory, we ask the question, is there still hope for Cedar Fair and Intamin? Now, today's episode of Coaster Theory is going to be a little different as I'm joined by Dale from Coaster Daddy. If you want to check out the video we made on his channel asking if Six Flags will work with Intamin again, then click that top link in the description down below. I'll put a card at the end of the video so you can be sure to check it out.
Now, let's dive into why Cedar Fair will work with Intamin again. Cedar Fair and Intamin had a long partnership in building some of the world's best coasters. When they worked together in the early 2000s, they created groundbreaking thrill rides that revolutionized the coaster industry. For starters, in the year 2000, Cedar Fair's flagship park, Cedar Point, would receive Millennium Force. Millennium Force stands at a towering 310 feet tall and broke 6 world records upon its opening, including the world's tallest and fastest coaster. Due to Millennium Force exceeding the 300-foot barrier, it introduced an entirely new type of coaster called the Giga Coaster. 2 years later, in 2002, Intamin unveiled its all-new hydraulic launch technology on Knott's Berry Farm's Accelerator. This hydraulic launch system was the fastest and most efficient launch system on the market. This new technology allowed the creation of Top Thrill Dragster, opening at Cedar Point in 2003. Top Thrill Dragster would bring riders from 0 to 120 miles per hour in just around 4 seconds and would propel riders up a 420-foot top hat. 2 years later, Six Flags Great Adventure added King de Ka, a slightly larger version of Top Thrill Dragster that would launch riders even faster than before. To this day, King de Ka stands as the world's tallest coaster, reaching 456 feet into the sky. Following 2005, Intamin designed world-class coasters such as El Toro, Maverick, Intimidator 305, Skyrush, Red Force, Taron, and the upcoming Pantheon.
Although the two companies worked together for years, it seems as all good things must come to an end, as upon the opening of Intimidator 305, Cedar Fair would no longer work with Intamin. The Intamin coasters Cedar Fair had installed in the previous decade were becoming unreliable with lots of downtime and maintenance costs. Instead of Intamin, Cedar Fair turned towards B&M to build their large-scale attractions, thus making the first B&M Giga. With years past and many losing hope, some still wonder if there is a chance for the two companies to come back together to build the next record-breaking coaster. So will they? Well, yes. For me to explain, take a look at the last 10 years Intamin and Cedar Fair haven't worked together. Shortly after Cedar Fair and Intamin split ways, Intamin also split ways with Six Flags. This marked the beginning of what some call the Intamin Drought, where not a single Intamin coaster was installed in the US for more than 7 years. Though Intamin was no longer making rides for American parks, their business was thriving in Europe. In the near decade of the Intamin Drought, Intamin began to move away from creating innovative concepts and settled on building upon the rides they were more comfortable with to make them reliable and appeal to more parks. Their Intamin Blitz model was used for Taron and Taiga, while their hypercoaster model was used for Flying Aces and Hyperion.
So, what changed that might get Cedar Fair interested in Intamin again? Remember how we said Intamin turned away from creating new concepts. This is no longer the case. At IAAPA 2018, they went back to their old roots and released plans for coasters they plan on opening at European parks in 2020 and 2021. The first is an all-new hypercoaster design that focuses on ejector airtime and banked hills. The second being a state-of-the-art switch track technology that would allow a new portion of track to open while the train remained in motion. Luckily, we will see the first high-speed switch track feature on Pantheon in 2020. How might these concepts relate to Cedar Fair and Intamin working together once again? It's the first time in years Intamin has started to create new concepts. A new ride like this may appeal to Cedar Fair as a business to get more people through the gates and increase their overall attendance.
A point to argue is the whole reason Cedar Fair stopped working with Intamin is because their rides grew unreliable and had some issues, so why would they get back together with a company that has problems? Since then, technology has caught up with itself to ensure that every ride will function adequately before installment. Intamin hasn't worked with Cedar Fair in about a decade, and in that time, all the rides they installed in Europe are high-quality, reliable attractions. In today's world, competition between parks can debate whether or not the park meets the demands they strive to reach. I recently made a video talking about Pantheon vs King's Dominion. I recommend you go check it out if you want to get a better idea of my thoughts on Pantheon, the removal of Volcano, and the rumored wing coaster. The gist of that video is King's Dominion is now down a launch coaster and Busch Gardens is receiving one of the world's best launch coasters. So, how could King's Dominion be able to compete with Pantheon if they don't add an Intamin? I know a wing coaster won't compete with Pantheon. The only way King's Dominion can counter the addition of Pantheon is with another Intamin coaster. King's Dominion's best hope would be a B&M Hyper, but Busch Gardens already has one of those, so where do they expand? Well, with an Intamin Hyper. Again, if you want to see that vid, I bring up some good points about what King's Dominion needs to do to compete with Busch. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is it's going to be very hard for King's Dominion to counter Pantheon without it being an Intamin. So I think it would be a stupid business decision to not work with Intamin. I know Cedar Fair has been doing just fine without Intamin, but if Cedar Fair and Intamin were to get back together, Cedar Fair would truly be second to absolutely none. You don't want your guests going to your competitor's park because they have a launch coaster that's better than the one you just removed. Whether Cedar Fair likes it or not, to boost their revenue, they're gonna need to compete. I feel Cedar Fair is much smarter than, say, Six Flags. Cedar Fair does not buy their rides in bulk. I think they are much smarter at creating alternative options to draw in more crowds, and I think they will soon realize Intamin has improved, and with the success of Pantheon, it's gonna be an eye-opener. My final answer is yes. Cedar Fair and Intamin will work together because it will ultimately be a smart business decision. But when?
These concepts are new, so Cedar Fair isn't going to be diving in headfirst asking for these rides. My guess to how it's going to play out is SeaWorld parks are going to add Intamin coasters, and some other chains such as Hershey might catch on. It would be a wake-up call for Cedar Fair that they need to make a move and add a quality non-B&M coaster. B&M can't compete with every coaster. Take Pantheon for example, and the King's Dominion Wing for 2021. Which do you think is going to be better? To answer the question, this is just a shot in the dark, but maybe sometime after or around 2023. Now, let's have a little fun. Let's say Cedar Fair and Intamin start to work together again. Where can we see them, and what model will they be? We already explained how an Intamin Hyper might be a good fit for King's Dominion, but what other parks might receive an Intamin? A possible contender is Knott's Berry Farm. There was a rumor a while back that Knott's might receive an Intamin high-speed transfer track coaster, and it could be a good fit for the park. They already have Accelerator, but this ride would be so much different, giving a good variation between the rides. Knott's is landlocked, so don't expect a Pantheon-sized ride to come. Think something with an out-and-back or compact layout. On the other hand, an Intamin Hyper would also be a great fit, serving as the park's first traditional Hyper and being much different from Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Next could be an Intamin Hypercoaster for California's Great America. We know they will receive a Hypercoaster at some point, so maybe it could be an Intamin. I won't be surprised if it were a B&M because we know Cedar Fair loves to add B&M coasters, so I'm leaning more towards it being a B&M, but who knows, things can change. Another option could be Canada's Wonderland. Canada's Wonderland is Cedar Fair's testing ground, and if they were to get a new model, then this would be the place to see it. For a specific model, I can see an Intamin launch coaster, one with the switch track feature. It would add another quality attraction to their lineup and give the park another good launch coaster. After the addition of Yukon Striker, I think either a new launch coaster or an RMC is the way to go.
Lastly is my home park Cedar Point. Much like Knott's, Cedar Point is landlocked, and if they want to add a large coaster, then they might need to compromise by removing a coaster. If Cedar Point were to get an Intamin, it could be something like an Intamin Hypercoaster along the lines of the Wallaby Belgium coaster. The only traditional hypercoaster in the park is Magnum XL 200, and it still gives great rides, but it's growing outdated, and a new hypercoaster would be awesome to sharpen Cedar Point's lineup. There are lots of other options Cedar Point can add before an Intamin Hyper, such as a GCI Woody or whatever they plan to add to outdo Steel Vengeance. Overall, an Intamin would be a great fit at Cedar Point. It would make the already impressive lineup even better.
In conclusion, Cedar Fair will work with Intamin again because Intamin has created more reliable rides and all new concepts. With Intamin's return to the United States with Pantheon, more competition will arise and Cedar Fair will need to use Intamin to their advantage. Once again, I want to give a massive thanks to Dale from Coaster Daddy for helping me out with this video. Make sure to check out the vid we made on his channel asking if Six Flags will work with Intamin again, and while you're over there, be sure to subscribe to his channel. If you want to see the video that leads up to this one, click the card at the top of the screen for my thoughts on why Pantheon is a brilliant expansion. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed and want to see more just like it, click this playlist right here. If you want to subscribe to my channel, click my little logo right beneath me. I am your host Zach from Theme Park Media signing off, and I will catch you in the next one.